Who's gonna take my spot?
I'll get into training.
Yeah, there you go.
Move this to the screen here.
Make him suffer.
Unless you're trying to get your chicks in before you're done.
Good.
No,
What were
no.
you thinking?
All right. Oh, so I don't know if I do. Wait. And over. Well,
Thank you.
we're budgeting process. So all in order. 6:33. Looks like we have all members and Travis. Welcome, Travis, is our new alternate. Is there any public comment? Get started. Looks like Collins. Hey, Colin, can you hear us? Can't hear him.
I'm sorry. Yes. Good evening. Yes. How are you, everybody?
All right, we're just kicking off.
Perfect.
So you don't have it. I'll email you this. This is the talking points for our board. And then I'll go through this quick. We'll probably have a little bit of discussion, and then we'll move to Colin and Holly and then David. So it's similar to last year. We talked about some kind of operating, parameters, standards for this coming budget season. So number one, and this was just me, so this is where I want to have the discussion with the board. Overall increase for the coming year should not exceed 3.5%. That said, last year we were at just a little over 4%, right? And this year might be as or more challenging. So I wanted to have discussion on that first and get everyone's thoughts.
I think it's a good starting point. I think, or a good goal to work towards. I think we kind of threw that number around a lot as a palatable number, and I think we need to see all the information that's coming in. But I think as a parameter, I think it makes sense.
Reasonable starting goal. I mean, it's a target, right? Is it achievable?
Yeah.
That's what we need to understand from the town and the book. But and I think it's a number we can throw out, and if that's the target that the town we feel that can absorb an increase, then that's why we're here, is to provide a target. But it's up to boards to give us the reasons why and what their assumptions are, which I think you have highlighted your other targets there. So.
Cool. Outside of mandatory operational obligations, hoping for, flat expenses to the extent that that can be achieved. 5-year capital plans be shared with the Board of Finance. And we'd like to have the prior year balance as a starting point. I think, the same schedule we've had, but I don't know if last year's had 5 years out. In past years we have. So if you can work towards that for this year, I think that helped a lot in prior years for us to kind of see what was coming up and, gives us a sense of what can be.
This,
yeah,
that gave us a itemized list of what's to expect. This was from 2023, so it had 2024, I think, and you broke it down by.
We had one before though that also went out further too,
Yeah.
with more projects. So
Yeah.
you'll have line items or maybe some additional culverts or things like that that you know need to be done but aren't being done. And I think that helps to show the picture of, you know, what we're, you know, faced with in the coming years. It helps, I think, you know, if, you know, we have to go to the town, if there's some contention around the current year, it's like, well, but we're pushing all this out because, you know, this also needs to get done. So, you know, work on that. The unallocated balance, I don't know if that's unallocated.
Remember, there was a separate.
Yeah, I think it's a
spreadsheet.
separate.
We had the interactive spreadsheet last year. I think that's what we're thinking of.
The interactive was more so for studying the.
That was for the mill rate, but you know, when it's talking the unallocated,
I think that it strikes me that there are probably at least two numbers that report. One would be the capital non-recurring reserves, which we, you know, put a little bit into each year, or traditionally have. So having updated balances for those would be important. And then the current undesignated fund balance, which by the time we start this budget process, certainly by the time we're getting to the point where we're setting the mill rate, we should be all caught up with our audits and should have, for the first time in several years, you know, have an actual up-to-date undesignated fund balance.
similar to, you know, prior year's budget balances, prior 2 years along with the current year budget. Personnel, you know, the summary for those expenses from each group, which I think they generally get as well. And then lastly, you know, if we can get presentations at least 2 days prior, looking at you, then so we can, you know, review them before, that would be very much appreciated. So with that, I will turn it over to Colin for RAM.
So thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. So I just want to start off by, first of all, apologizing to everybody for not being able to physically be there. I actually had a subcommittee meeting this evening that literally finished, I think, a minute before 6:30. So I'm glad I was able to work it out to even attend virtually. You know, I explained this to Mike when he reached out to me about the fact that we had this meeting this evening. I don't really have too much to share with regards to the RAM budget at this point, as you all know, and I'm sure are, you know, both Holly and David are in the same situation. We're in, you know, we're just starting the budget process right at this time, right? So I don't have, you know, numbers, or I don't have proposals, or I don't have really much to share with regards to where, you know, where we're going to end up being at the conclusion of the budget process. But what I could tell you is that we certainly are committed to trying to come in with a, you know, a fiscally responsible budget that meets the needs of our students and staff. That's what we're, you know, what we always try to do. Last year, I was really happy that we were able to come in with a number that was able to meet the needs of our students and staff, but obviously be responsive to the fact that, you know, times are tight right now, you know, and the 2.6% budget that we ended up approving and getting approved through referendum was, you know, was one of the lowest budgets, I think, approved in the state of Connecticut by a school district, which I think is a pretty telling that we're always trying to make sure that we do right by our towns. You know, just some things that I'll highlight is the fact that, you know, we are excited because of the fact that we will be sunsetting our bonding payments for the renovation and construction of the high school, or the construction of the high school that was done approximately 20 years ago. The payments for those bonds are set to conclude at the end of not this school year, but the year after that. at the end of the 26-27 school year. What I can say is that we are looking at bonding out other projects. We do have some significant facility needs that need to be addressed. It should be no surprise to this group. I talked about it last year when I presented to you all and presented at our public budget hearing in April. I don't know the full scope of what the cost of what those projects are going to be, but I did introduce this, or not introduce. I talked about it at a board meeting, or at our board meeting in September. We are in the process now of trying to get a cost estimation of what the projects that we've identified as needing to be done, so that I can have a better understanding of kind of the impact of the financial impact of the projects that need to be done. But again, I wouldn't anticipate us going out to bond this fiscal year. What we're looking at doing is looking at having that process take place next fiscal year. And again, I'll have more information for my Board of Education and obviously our sending towns as well. Probably at some point in the spring. Hope to have a better sense of things as we go through the budget process. Another thing that I'll mention that I'm obviously excited about, because it does reduce the financial impact on our member towns, is I'm hoping to expand our partnership with Columbia. I think this year we have 10 students that are attending, either 9 or 10 students. The base salary is around $15,400, with additional costs for any special education or related services. So we're looking at $150,000 in revenue, which is decreasing the each member town levy. And I am very optimistic that the number of students that choose RAM as a high school of choice from Columbia is only going to increase. Obviously, only time will tell, but that's my feeling at this point. So as hopefully our enrollment numbers from Columbia increase, that will even further reduce the member town levies for each of our 3 member towns. The only other thing that I'll mention is, we will continue to look at each position that we have that we get through each position that we get through retirement or resignation, to see if it's a position that needs to be filled. As this Board of Finance knows, and as my Board of Education knows, I'm very conscientious that we want to be responsive to the financial challenges that each of our towns is facing, and we also recognize that we have had declining enrollment, although we do anticipate that enrollment, and we're projected to have an enrollment increase over the next 4 to 5 years. But with that being said, we continue to look at positions to see if when they become vacated, if they need to be filled or not, which obviously has an impact on our budget as well. So I can certainly do my best to answer any questions that anybody has. But again, we just rolled out our budget handbook to our department coordinators and administrators just last week. Actually a week ago today. So we are in store for a long budget development process, and I'm excited to eventually present our proposed administrative budget, at least the first round of it, to our board in January of 2026. But try to answer any questions that people might have.
So I know you had the track was the big project this past summer, right? And from what I've seen or heard, came out very well. Is there any additional things that came out of that? Any other additional work or costs associated with anything like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I didn't mention the track, and I should have. So I'm glad you brought it up. We're so excited. We just opened the track up actually a week ago. This coming Friday, a week ago this Friday, we had our first home soccer game. Didn't open up the track, obviously, for an event that won't happen until the spring, but really the first time the field that could be used. We had a home soccer game on Friday and a home football game on Saturday. So students and families are glad to be able to have some home games. The project came in on time and on budget, which is always a good thing when you do a large scale project like that. We appreciate the support of the towns and the communities in getting that project completed. We have done a lot of work to our athletic facilities. We did, I'm sure you all know, we did work not only to the track last year, but the year before that, we did the perimeter drain around our competition field, which is the field that is in the center of the track. We did that prior to doing the track because we needed to make sure that we had proper drainage so that when we replaced the track, that it wouldn't, that the drainage wouldn't go, that any rain wouldn't go onto the track and that would cause potentially freezing and cracking. So we knew if we were going to invest almost $1.5 million in a track, we wanted to make sure that we had a adequate drainage so that there wouldn't be any damage through freezing. And so that project was done the year before, which is great. We also have done work to our competition field the year before that, where we had significant work done to increase the quality of or improve the quality, I should say, of the field surface. And we also at the same time had work done to what we call our 316 North Field, which is one of our practice fields that is adjacent to Wall Street. There are some and we also actually had we're completing the project. It's not quite done yet because there's some punch list items that need to be completed with regards to our middle school baseball field because that we needed to bring that up to be compliant with ADA requirements. Again, that the lion's share of that work was done this summer, and that we're just working through a few punch list items that we need to work with a contractor to get squared away. We do still have some athletic facilities needs. We have some drainage issues with our baseball field, which requires us to either cancel or move home baseball games if we have significant rainfall. That's one of the things that when we prioritized all of our athletic fields needs, that was one that we just said we can work around it until we have the ability to get it fixed. So we'll continue to try to address that hopefully in the next coming years as well. But yeah, I mean we've really done a great job. The board has been very, very, very strategic in their use of the non-recurring funds and our capital budget that we are allocated each year to address those things. So that it is not a substantial financial impact, and we don't have to include them now when we do look at bonding projects. One of the things that we are anticipating including in the bonding is the tennis courts at the high school and the fencing around the tennis courts. They are in significant disrepair, and we need to move on getting those figured out sooner rather than later because they will soon be like the track was for us last year, which was we won't be able to use them for competition if we don't address those needs. Any other questions?
Thank you. Thanks for
All right.
attending.
Well, again, if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to share them with Mike, and Mike can certainly reach out to me, and I'll do my best to be as responsive as I can. Again, I appreciate you all letting me attend virtually, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Okay.
Thanks, Kyle.
Take care. Yep.
I'll just have to stay organized. Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. We're off to a great start. Happy fall. So, a couple of things just want to mention that every year the Board of Ed, with my assistants, prepares an annual operating budget, and it's exclusively aimed at supporting students, programs, curricula, professional development, as outlined in our strategic continuous improvement plan. And if you're not familiar with our strategic continuous improvement plan, which we commonly call our SKIP, it's posted on our website, and it's really full of a lot of information about what our goals are for all students programmatically, data around those goals that form those goals, action steps that we're taking, investments that we're making. So that's our, that really helps us and grounds us and keeps us centered, and it really informs the budget as well. In the second bullet, as those of you around the table have seen in my presentations in the past, Marlboro Elementary School has one of the lowest per pupil expenditures in our DERG, which stands for Demographic Reference Group. We're in DERG C, but we're in the bottom 1, 2, or 3. And that's not terribly surprising because an elementary school generally is less expensive to operate than a secondary school. But then when you look across similar schools like ours, pre-K through 6 schools across the state, I think there are, I don't know, 14 to 16 of them. I think we're the lowest spending. And it's expensive to educate children. Everything's expensive, but it is an expensive endeavor. But year over year, we do come in on the lower end of that. The Board of Ed and the school district have built a reputation for communicating proactively with school and community stakeholders. And in recent years, we've really tried to extend our efforts for the fuller community, not just MES parents. And so our website, which was reinvigorated about 2 years ago, is really quite good, quite easy to navigate, publicly accessible. I prepare superintendent corner pieces for the River East periodically, and our school principals will prepare articles in the River East, because we know that the River East is actually pretty well read. It's free, right? And it's good. It's a good local paper. We launched through the board's communication subcommittee. We launched a school district Facebook page last year, and we post things multiple times a week, trying not to, do it too much that it gets tiresome, but just sharing with the broader community some of the nice things that go on every day in the school. And in this day and age of social media, Facebook is important outreach for that. We also try to engage with the public and have good accessibility to the Board of Ed's work through the fact that we still hold hybrid meetings, even post-COVID. We've been holding hybrid meetings since, and we post the recordings of our meetings, and we encourage the public to engage with the board by providing 2 public comment sections in meetings. One's on the front end of the meeting and one's on the back end of the meeting. So depending on whether people want to share thoughts beginning of a meeting or relative to something that may have been discussed at a meeting, there are 2 opportunities. And that's good for public engagement. And we have public comment that come in person. We have public comment that can come by way of people attending remotely, as well as people being able to email 24 hours in advance. In the most recent, 4 or 5 years, we have successfully retained and recruited a high quality and caring staff. I think that's something that is a very strong reputation long before the last 5 years. I think the Marlboro staff has had a very sound reputation for not only being very committed in the art and science of teaching, but really being caring and really knowing kids. I've worked in a lot of schools, a lot of school districts, and this truly is a very special place for elementary age children. We've implemented a literacy program, which is aligned to the science of reading for foundational reading. We really believe that opportunity and access comes by way of really being able to make sense of reading, and we're really committed to that. And all of our systems around reviewing all students and their progress is from a deeply held belief that all children should be able to read effectively and make meaning of text. And to us, that's equity at the heart of what equity means to us. We have shown impressive gains in student achievement in math, which is hard to do. Math is instruction can be difficult, but we've seen gains year over year in the math growth and achievement of our students. This is the first year where we've launched a fully fledged STEAM program: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. It takes place in this very space, not in this configuration, but all students have a STEAM special once a week where they are problem solving, they're collaborating, and it's going really, really well. And it's a pretty big lift to do a full-fledged, full programmatic, right curriculum from scratch across 7 grade levels, K through 6. So we're really fortunate to have a staff member who's taken that on, and we're hearing really nice things from kids about it. And that's another thing that we feel very strongly about, that it's enrichment for all kids, because problem solving and collaborating and iterating is life, right? In any workplace, in any occupation. And if you learn how to do that from an early age and be sort of less inhibited to fail and experiment, if you will, that's a good mindset to start to build in. And it's guaranteed. It's a guaranteed experience for all kids. It's not an extracurricular. It's not whether a teacher wants to bring a class down to a STEAM room. It is for all kids. So we're very excited about that. And of course, we support our Essential Arts program. In addition to STEAM, our PE health program, art, music, Spanish, all very important things. Again, we're very proud to have a K through 6 Spanish program. All kids have Spanish. When you think about language acquisition, it doesn't really get better than that. We have enhanced our social emotional approach to learning through our positive behavioral intervention and supports, our Choose Love program, and other things, because we're also trying to help, in partnership with families, raise children to be empathetic, to be thoughtful, to be accountable, to be good citizens, and we think that's going pretty well. We've also supported students with special needs, while at the same time managing the associated costs involved in that pretty effectively. We expanded our extracurricular learning opportunities. We offer over 14 clubs. Those include invention, convention, and future problem solvers. But again, if it weren't for the committed nature of our staff, we wouldn't be able to offer that. While there are small stipends for those, it's not really about the money. It's really about teachers and staff members sharing some really creative outlets for kids. And so that's really up and running and a real delight, especially through like the long month of March. You know, if you're not a basketball fan, and I think everybody here might be, but if you're not, it's our own March Madness, and it's really fun and energizing. The board will continue to productively collaborate with the town around lots of things, but especially around the projects that are on the horizon. As everybody may recall, we conducted a facility study, which concluded last year. We presented the findings of that study last December.
It's late in the year, November.
Yeah. And that facility study, which was conducted by an outside architectural firm, for which there was an RFP to select that firm, that study is on our website. If you go to our website and there are tabs across the top, we made a separate tab for the facility study so that anybody can see what was in that study, what the findings were, what the recommendations were, and any updates relative to that study. We're just housing everything there. You know, there's nothing super special and fancy and exciting about those projects. They're necessary things. A roof, which is beyond its expected life and beyond its warranty. An HVAC system, the roof and the HVAC system are over 20 years old. The HVAC system is somewhat operational and somewhat not operational. And there are a lot of handling units on the roof. So if you're replacing the roof and or you're upgrading out of necessity your HVAC system, which is beyond its practical life, you do those at the same time, because otherwise you might be piercing into a roof and wrecking a new warranty, all those sort of things. Those two things go together. And fortunately, the roof is holding steady for the most part. Again, both of those things are beyond their practical life, and those projects do need to happen. And they are of a bonding level of a significant amount, because this is a large facility. That is a reality. And, at the point at which the town is in a position from an auditing perspective and from other financial considerations to address that, it's here, it's right, these are notes. There isn't, I don't at this time think there's anything that I'm going to be recommending for the capital request relative to the roof and the HVAC replacement in this budget cycle. However, switching topics, the other two things in that report was an egress from the second grade wing. There's a canopy that was built, and it was never built well when the renovation was done 22 years ago. And in the facility study, that was earmarked as a must-do now kind of thing. We even looked into, could we just not replace it? Could we just brick that up? Is that egress necessary, given all of the other exit patterns that we might have in the building? And in collaboration with the fire marshal and investigating fire codes and other things, it is a necessary egress. So it does need to be rebuilt. At what cost remains to be seen. But I was sort of in favor of when we just brick it up. And at first that looked at it might be possible. We don't think that it is. So therefore, and upon the recommendations of the facility study, we are going to be engaging in an RFP process now for doing the specs for the egress project, to try to present that as a capital request in this cycle. I can't estimate the actual cost, because until you actually have an engineering study to really fine tune the specs for that, I can't present numbers on that. And I don't know to what extent that might require a short note or something. I don't know yet. And the other issue that the facility study flagged as really needs to be sorted out now is a long-standing water infiltration issue in the community room in the stage area. It's not a new issue, it's a long-standing issue. There's something that's causing water to infiltrate that needs to be more thoroughly investigated through a study, and we're doing an RFP for that to be investigated as well, so that that can get addressed. So, the things that are in that facility study, none of them are, it's not like a renovation where you are doing something super special to the layout of the building or changing the nature of your classrooms. These are fundamental facility things that need to be addressed. And that's, it is what it is, but it's heavy. It's heavy financially. And as you heard from Colin at RAM, it's kind of on a similar timeline as RAM's timeline, and that's concerning. From a how much can a community manage? But I think we have to be realistic and planful and creative. On the creative side of things, Chip and myself, along with John Mercier, Smitty's, Mike, and Deborah Rowe and David have come together at least twice so far, very informally, a non-quorum meeting of any of the constituent groups, to really just sort of brainstorm, like, what are some creative ways that we could be working together as a a Marlboro community, but as like a Region 8 community, to try to be realistic about the costs coming down the pike. I mean, Hebron is going to have its own costs related to their infrastructure, whether it's on the town side or the two Hebron elementary schools that, from what I understand, both need a significant amount of work, or they might be building a new school. I don't play in that sandbox, so I'm not exactly sure, but all of the Region 8 towns are facing pretty significant capital costs that I do think we can't have our heads in the sands about that, and we need to be thinking creatively. You know, Chip and I, in our respective ways, have quietly started reaching out to like how might, you know, at Colin has Columbia kids coming in, which is really neat. You know, we have space here. You know, could we bring in kids from other school districts in a way that where we could charge tuition? We have the space. You know, just trying to be creative, knowing that these costs are real for the community, and that's that weighs heavily upon us. And at the same time, oh, you know, what are you going to do if the roof fails? Not run school? I mean, you know, if the roof's not failing, I don't mean to like scare anybody. It is not failing. It is being well maintained, but roofs don't last forever. And so I just want to put that out there as it's immediate, and what you know, after the elections and other things, we're going to need to continue these conversations. I think as a community of Marlboro, when it comes to this facility and Marlboro's share of what might be coming from RAM. But I think it's pretty similar. I think it's roof and HVAC sort of stuff, and RAM's big.
Just staying on that for 1 second, we are going to be having a committee for that project. And there's going to be representation, Board of Finance, and Board of Select, along with a building committee.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen will appoint a building committee, because any project of this magnitude would have a building committee with representatives from various town entities, so citizens from the town who might have, you know, construction experience, project management experience, that sort of thing, that can really help to look at these things from multiple standpoints. And so that will become a thing when these projects become more of a thing. The egress and the stage area are not related to the roof and the HVAC, and so they really can be done separately. And the architects who did the study did say that those really need to be done yesterday. In terms of just some budgeting outlooking, as I mentioned, the first bullet I've spoken to here, we are not anticipating any increases in staffing. And we are anticipating some enrollment and student needs related reductions in staffing, which I'm not prepared to go into detail tonight. But I mean, I'm not saying it's good news that we have some reductions, and at the same time, from a cost perspective, that helps to balance some of the increases in personnel costs, contractual increases, etc. We still participate in the Region 8 health insurance premium. Consortium, and the placeholder for the premium increase doesn't start to come to light until December and January, and it's very tentative when it first does come out. And you may remember that there were many years where the region did very well, like 0% increases, which is unheard of in the marketplace. And then starting last year, it was pretty significant increases. And that's all, we're self-insured as a consortium. It's all claims related. there's a healthy reserve. The consortium as a group has voted to borrow from the reserve periodically while maintaining a healthy reserve. But I have no idea at this time what that premium increase may amount to. It ended up being 8. It was financially actually a lot more than that, but we did borrow from the reserve to offset that somewhat. So, but that's coming off of zeros. So it was pretty significant cost driver for all of the region and town budgets. So I'm happy to address any questions. Comments?
So you mentioned collaboration with the other Region 8 towns. Is there any discussion about potential benefits for regionalization of services or guys touch on that?
I will say there are talks, and with no commitments. We presented some what we thought were very logical ideas, and I don't think people are ready yet, and I don't know that they will be ready. It's just that we're being pretty realistic about what we know to be some costs that are right in front of us. I'm not sure other towns have come to that realization, so maybe that'll be fertile ground, but not quite yet.
And just like whatever detail you can get into, but that looking at personnel, is that looking at what type?
It's more about space, and space utilization, because not only would we like to see our space more utilized, but it also could have a pretty impactful influence on our state reimbursement for a major project, because you can get dinged if you aren't more fully utilizing your space for education purposes. So we're really trying to do that. And we're also committed to working with our state legislators around that penalty, because it's not really fair. You can't make more babies happen or speed up how fast kids become 5 to enter school. And it's pretty punitive if you get dinged on space utilization. So we do plan to try to see what we can do through our 2 state legislators. So we're just trying to really cover a lot of bases on the way, but in the short term, it's the egress and the stage area that we'll have more information about in the next couple of months, up to the budget presentation.
All right. Thank you for this document. I think that 3.5% is a good target. There are still a lot of moving pieces. To Will's point, I don't know if it is even on yet at this early stage, but it's certainly something to aim for, and I'm committed to do that. With respect to our personnel costs, it is helpful that we have settled contracts, collective bargaining agreements with our 3 unions already settled, that cover this next year. So, and those all almost across the board have about a 3% increase. So it's kind of nice, even at this early stage, to know, to have a higher degree of certainty than we have in the past. To Holly's point, the big question mark in the personnel figure is the health insurance. Now, with these contracts that all settled in the last year, so they are new, we did successfully negotiate greater cost sharing with the employees, so their contribution towards premiums will increase in the coming year by modest amounts, but every little bit helps. But there again, we just don't know how much that overall number will increase. I remain optimistic that it might be a modest one, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. The with respect to the capital plan, and in particular the 5-year capital plan, happy to put that on a piece of paper. Our timing in the past, and I don't expect this to change as we move forward, is largely driven by grant cycles and financing, and when we get cost shares and cost matching, typically from the state. That's when you're looking at projects that that range in cost anywhere from the many hundreds of thousands up to sometimes $2 or $2.5 million. We really do want to maximize any grants and cost sharing that we can get from the state. So by and large, that's what dictates the timeline and the schedule. As I look ahead, something else that I see impacting not just this next budget cycle, but the next several years involves vehicle replacement and the escalating cost of those vehicles. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the cost of fire apparatus have increased dramatically. If you think about kind of the overall aggregate cost of living since roughly 2017, 2018, you take the cumulative consumer price index, you're probably looking at roughly 25% over the last 6-7 years. During that same period, the cost of most fire trucks has increased 100%. A truck that used to cost $500,000 now costs $1,000. And so what that means is that historically Marlboro has done a great job, frankly, a very responsible job of setting aside money into this reserve fund that historically was used to purchase the fire truck and sometimes could, had sufficient funds in it to outright buy the truck, just to pay cash and not have to do a lease to buy or bond or borrow money at all. With the most recent truck that we purchased, we did have a very significant down payment, which helped a lot, but we still had to, and you approved this, so I hope you remember it, but still had to enter into a lease agreement. And we anticipate closing on that in the next couple of weeks and taking delivery hopefully in December of that new vehicle, which by the way is replacing a truck from 1991. So it's not as though we're riding wild here, replacing equipment that has not reached the end of its useful life. Unfortunately, we also have in aging public works. You may recall that this last year, with your permission, after traveling to Schenectady, New York to look at a used vehicle, we ended up purchasing an F-550 truck for public works that has now arrived. It's outfitted. They're very excited about it. And it was much needed to replace a truck that no longer served. I am as you may have heard, effective November 1st, there will be, I believe, it's a 25% tariff on any trucks that are manufactured outside of the United States, as many of the trucks that everyone here uses are. But I'm not trying to suggest that the cost is going to increase 25%, likely will not. But I do expect that tariff will have an inflationary impact, not only on trucks that are manufactured abroad, but also on trucks that are manufactured domestically. And so I think that it is very likely that we will need to replace, and include in our capital budget this year the replacement of one truck But looking further afield, I think that it would be wise to revisit the traditional amounts that we set aside into these reserve accounts each year. Because those amounts, which have been consistent, to your credit, that's wonderful, have been consistent for a very long time, have not necessarily been adjusted to accommodate for the increasing prices of these things. So it might be wise, in the past, we set aside $40,000, and did that for 5 years to then go and purchase a single axle dump truck, which could easily cost $200,000. It may be wise to start setting aside 45 or even 50,000 to accommodate and to actually have something closer to the amount of money that we need to purchase these vehicles, and that could be a driver that might make it difficult to hit that 3.5 number. I don't want to comment on that. We're still very early in the process, but I think that I would encourage this board to have those conversations and to contemplate if that would be a feasible thing to do, because I think it really is the responsible thing to do if you want to continue the tradition that we inherited and kind of the intent. We need to adjust those amounts so that we can continue doing what Marlboro has done for many years.
Culverts. What do we select for those type of projects where?
Well, right now we're doing South Buckboard. If you drive down there, there's a big and very expensive temporary bridge that everyone is driving on. We anticipate the precast concrete structure for the box culvert to be delivered on Friday. And it should be a very, very busy construction site all next week and probably through until almost Thanksgiving. Coming up next, I believe, is Hodge Road, and then we have one on South Road. And I'll have to look at what is coming up next. The timing of all of these, we are applying for grants for state aids, and the timing of those projects is closely tied to if and when we receive that funding, because if something costs $1 million and we have even a chance of having half of that paid for by the state, then that's a really significant positive impact on our mill rate. So we obviously don't want to inflict any more burden on our taxpayers than that is absolutely necessary to keep our public roadways safe. It's a balancing act between wanting to maximize the grant reimbursements with let's really make sure that this road doesn't wash out when it rains. So,
And I guess similar tracks of both RAM and MES mentioning bonding. What timeline would the town be on in terms of getting caught on audits, grades, things like that, to be looking at? What fiscal year might that conversation start coming up?
So we're within weeks of finishing the 24 audit. When that is done, we have the team in place. We can roll right into the 25 audit, which is the year that just finished, June 30th. So we're very, very close to catching up. The timeline for actually doing that is going to be dependent on our audit firm, because we are one of several clients that they have, in fact, many dozens of clients. And so I'm optimistic that we will be able to submit that audit very early in 2026, hopefully in January or February, at which point we will be caught up. So we could, once we are caught up, go out and get a rating from one of the ratings agencies and begin the process of bonding if this board so chooses.
Mentioned the reserve for public works. think it's important to look at all the reserves. Some of them, look at those carefully, because I know, I think it's 150,000 what we had for the town. And that's, some of that was set aside for the union negotiations and stuff like that. So I don't know if you have any other big items coming up next year's, but just throw, put in your head, make sure you look at all the reserves where, if you're going to, if you want to increase the town.
Talking about
The contingency.
We dip down below
Yeah.
15%. What's the status?
Well, Well, that's the undesignated.
Undesignated fund balance, the
Yeah, I'm talking about the
contingency is a line.
100 or 125, but somewhere in that range, but
It is, and I'm very grateful that we have that because prices are kind of squirrely these days. And so I think that when we conclude the year and get ready to audit it, we will be happy that we had that contingency available to us. That being said, to your point, especially with the three union contracts settled, I think that we probably could take that from where it is now, which I need to look, but if memory serves, I think you're right, it is at 125. I think that we probably could take it down to 100. I wouldn't
Yeah,
necessarily.
just saying,
go
when you-
lower than that,
yeah, so that might give you some leverage to move that over to, to have no impact and increase public works or whatever other areas that you feel you have.
Well, and the other, I don't know if this is good news or not. I guess it depends, where you stand depends a little bit on where you sit, or where you drive in this case. But we do have some revenue coming in from the speed cameras on North Wall Street. Thankfully, they have done a magnificent job of slowing people down. And because that revenue is uncertain, we've been at this for 90 days at this point. So I don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the year. And because it is, 1 year may not even look like the last year. We should only allocate those funds for one-time expenses. But those funds potentially, they can't be used on absolutely anything, but they can be used for road maintenance and traffic safety. So, we could allocate some of those funds to help purchase a truck or even offset one of the culvert projects. It's not going to be anywhere near enough to pay for the whole project, but we could potentially use some of those funds to partially offset that, and that could alleviate some of the pressure on the mill rate. So that's
Where does that stick? Because that's not a capital account, right? Like how do you anticipate showing that for us?
right now we are recording it in its own fund. It is a traffic enforcement revenue fund. So
So it's gonna be a revenue account.
that's what it is now. We haven't.
I wasn't sure. I was trying to figure out.
So on that, is there any additional revenue that you foresee either coming off the books from last year? Like, a few years ago, we lost Middlesex because of their,
You have the adjustment with the mill rate, right?
Well, so we are in the final stages of the revaluation. And so what that is going to do is in the coming weeks, everyone is going to get a letter in the mail alerting them to their new assessed value. And I'm stealing myself for the reaction when people see that their home values went up by 40%, 5%. And I need to, from a communications perspective, need to get out in front of this because there are going to be some people who think that their taxes are increasing by 40%. And that is not true. What will happen is that the assessed values broadly go up, the mill rate will come down. Now, to your point about revenues, what that also means is that our mill rate likely will drop down below the threshold for the state to reimburse any of the motor vehicle tax. So we will lose several tens of thousands of dollars that up until now the state was reimbursing us, and they made that policy on purpose. I mean, I go to meetings with other town managers, and other towns have had this happen to them in each of the last 2 years, and now it's our turn.
The offsets, positive offsets to that, new businesses, anything that you can think of that can help us sleep at night before, right?
I mean, we have a consistent stream of building permits, mostly home improvements, additions. So, I think that the grant list will grow slowly, but it's not going to be too dramatic. I also think that, the town has already approved and issued permits for 2 very significant projects, the condos on North Main Street and the 96 apartment units on South Main, just at the end of School Drive. But I have not observed any significant activity at either of those sites. And I don't know exactly why, but it would not surprise me if, whether it is the availability of labor or the cost of materials, if some of these developers and builders are adopting a wait and see approach.
Sure, risks of that just dying on the vine, those projects, and now we're left with a vacant lot for years to.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that those lots were vacant before, so
Now they're cleared though. I mean, they were.
okay.
No, I'm just curious, is there a risk that?
Sure, I mean, the permits are issued, so, but we don't really have any, frankly, carrot or stick to force someone to follow through and build it. We've given them permission to, and force them to. So I remain optimistic that they will eventually get done, but if you had asked me 2 years ago,
My son
are we gonna
works.
have it at least partially completed, I probably would have said, yeah, I think in 2 years we'll have a foundation poured and see some activity, and we haven't.
My son works at Three Fellows. They, if you don't know, are the ones that are building
Right.
the apartments and the storage facility. And he was told that to your point, they are kind of, taking their time and hoping that costs do go down, but, and they want to do a lot of the work themselves. So it is going to take another year or two. Probably. They're moving, with full intention of getting that done. It's obviously to their benefit to get it done and have that revenue come in for them. But yeah, they're kind of moving at their own pace.
Speaking of the Three Fellows, did we get 100% of the tax from that?
Well, it wasn't fully active. Starbucks wasn't in last year.
I don't think that we did, in part because I don't think that Starbucks was in there by October 1st, which is the cutoff. And then that there is still a vacant, and the cleaners were not in yet. That came in after Starbucks. And then it's just a rumor at this point, so I hate trafficking in rumors. But it is possible that Starbucks may take over the additional vacant space to create a sit-down cafe, which would be great. And if that does happen, then the building would be fully occupied.
We're not talking a ton. I mean, it's.
Every little bit helps. I'm
It's
not going to
right.
turn it down, but we're not talking about a game changer that's going to appreciably lower the cost. Yeah. No, I mean, the condos and the apartments, that would be a big number that could really move the needle. Filling one more space in the Three Fellows Plaza is welcome and appreciated, but it's not going to move the needle in the city.
And for your capital projects that you had over the summer, those were all done or is there?
Yeah. They were all done, the sidewalks in front, from a safety perspective, were taken care of, we rekeyed internally.
Site was,
We did some door replacement parts.
is there, was there the last round of? Yeah.
It was the final year of that, that might have been the year before, my memory,
No, I can't remember.
but basically everything that we asked for, capital funds was completed. And there was one, oh, and the HVAC study. The indoor air quality study was the other piece, and that was completed. And a report for the outcomes of that indoor air quality study will be reported to the Board of Education in its October meeting, October 23rd.
Back up for public comment. Okay. Aaron, you have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? No, they were good. Thank you.